I don't see Counselor Powers.
Pardon me?
We don't have a video on you, sir, but I can hear you. Ah, there you are. Thank you so much.
Yes, ma'am.
You said it takes about 5 minutes. So, so you're going to get prior to that delay. I know what you mean.
Like right now,
Oh,
but you
yeah. We can start.
What's the password for the emails? Of course I know. You were my hand us. Password in the city hall.
No, that's not like that. Oh, I didn't know that.
I think it's, I mean, okay.
And we're ready whenever you are, Mayor.
Thank you, Kathy. Good evening and thank you for attending tonight's city council meeting. For those attending remotely, the camera in council chambers is set up to show those attending in person tonight. The platform we are using has a raised hand feature. You will notice a picture of a hand in the lower left-hand corner. When we reach the point in the meeting where the public has the opportunity to address council, you can click that button to be given your opportunity to address council. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for Kathy, please call the roll.
Mayor Tulley,
Here.
Counselor Selly,
Here.
Counselor Powers. Counselor Powers,
Here.
Counselor Scamperly, Counselor Stevenson. Here. Counselor Tebow,
Here.
Counselor Trim. Here. Quorum present.
Thank you. And we've been alerted by Councilor Scamperly. He is on his way to this meeting. And I'll also note that Councilor Powers is attending remotely. He provided sufficient notice and therefore may participate in discussion and may vote on any action brought to the table this evening. We have two presentations tonight. The first one on battery energy storage. And I'll turn this over to City Manager Fonda Cronis.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We're going to hold off just a second.
They're not there. I'll go ahead. My apologies. It's not.
Okay.
I'll be right back.
So apparently we have an IT glitch on including these handouts in the presentation. So I will start and then Kathy's going to get them up to speed. So if we look in the second page of my PowerPoint presentation, this is about battery energy storage systems, BESS, and we call it BESS. So I'll refer to this as BESS. And it's exactly what it sounds like. They're batteries that absorb energy from different sources. They store them and then release that energy when necessary. This is part of the state's mandate and directives on clean energy and moving away from fossil fuels. When the sun shines or the wind blows, oftentimes energy is produced above and beyond what can be absorbed by the grid, and having batteries to store that excess energy to be used when maybe the sun isn't shining or maybe when the wind isn't blowing is part of that process. The state has mandates to meet certain criteria for clean energy and migrating away from fossil fuels, and battery energy storage is part of that mandate. However, under New York State municipal home rule, the city does hold the power to direct where and how these systems operate on a local basis, like within the city itself. And any ordinance, whether it come from the state or the locality, can protect public health, safety, and quality of life. Do we have that yet, Kathy?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I'll give you a second to catch up. I'm on the third slide.
There.
Perfecto. So this is a diagram that kind of shows how this thing, this whole system works. You can see the solar panels, you can see the wind power blades, and even the grid itself. That's where the power generation happens from. Excess power is stored in battery storage and discharged later on when there's peak demand or emergencies. I would also point out that one of the ways battery energy storage works is batteries purchasing and storing power at low demand cycles for use in higher demand cycles. That's both a profit motive, because low demand power is less expensive than higher demand power, but it also helps in situations where the grid becomes overwhelmed and this power can be dumped into the grid and help to mitigate any brownout situations that there are. So Kathy, all right, you're gonna always ahead of me, one step. When we think about battery energy storage, there are two tiers, tier 1 and tier 2. Tier 1 is what you might have in your household. Think, for example, if you have solar panels on your house that collect the sun and generate energy, it may generate at that moment in time more electricity than your house would use. Having some household residential style battery energy storage could absorb the additional electricity and then utilize it when the sun goes down. That is looked at in our ordinances and by the state differently, and there's less of a burden on permitting and approval processes, and it is permitted in all zones according to the state best recommendations and in our proposed legislation. Tier 2 is more industrial in nature. It's for capacity thresholds for battery storage above 600 kilowatt hours, generally used on an industrial grid scale, generally restricted to industrial business and mixed residential areas, although council has the ability to restrict it further. As far as the approval process is concerned, it's required, a special use permit is required And this has the highest environmental scrutiny in seeker, which is a type 1. The proposed legislation ordinance that we're asking City Council to consider has a number of physical and geographic boundaries and barriers to try to mitigate any health and safety issues that would concern a mandated 10-foot high fence that's either solid or screened properly, a 300-foot boundary and buffer from single-family residential sections. The state requires some environmental protections, especially around flood hazard areas and wetlands. And the city, not that it has any agricultural properties, but make sure that that is not a concern either. So there are some prohibitions within our proposed legislation to try to protect our folks' health and safety and quality of life issues. So there are 3 oversight sections to the proposed ordinance, and I will talk about them each individually. The first is the permitting or the pre-construction phase. And you can see the chart here is, quote, the path to approval. Obviously, the first step is a completed and reviewed checklist to make sure that all of the information that we need in an application is there. A very important part of this is escrow funding. These types of developments are very complicated, and very few municipalities of our size have the expertise to be able to dig into the nitty-gritty on these things. And this is not unusual with solar or wind projects to require an escrow payment to be able to allow the community itself to fund a consultant's review without taxpayer dollars. Also included in that, as I mentioned earlier, is a type 1 seeker review, which is the highest environmental scrutiny standard there is. There's lots of public transparency because there's a mandatory public hearing with printed notices and direct mailings for any neighbors, any property owners within 200 feet of a proposed site. And then final action, of course, would be done by the planning board as a site planning review entity. So that is a very detailed and highly regulated pre-construction application process. Assuming that something is permitted and does get built, there's lots of active oversight during operation itself. The hardware and certifications are pretty stringent. All the site plan reviews must be done by a New York State licensed professional engineer. Equipment must be certified by nationally recognized laboratories. During operation, there must be 24/7 monitoring, including ultraviolet and infrared cameras linked to a 24/7 emergency operations network. And as far as our big concern, which would be fire safety, certified people must be contracted with and available to start traveling to a site if there were a fire within 15 minutes of the event. There is annual mandatory developer-funded training with our first responders and other toxic plume analysis processes that would happen in case there was a problem or a fire of some sort. So again, during the active operation, lots of oversight, lots of consideration for readiness. And then really the third area is what happens if the useful life of this facility expires? What happens if the company goes out of business? What do we do with the land with a battery energy storage facility on top of it? Well, our legislation in the piggybacks off of the state requirement is having a surety bond. 150% of the estimated physical removal and disposal costs. So whatever we calculate working with the developer, the disposal cost would be, you get 1.5 times that in the surety bond. It's inflation protected. In this way, it guarantees that there's money in case something happens to be able to restore the land to its previous level. Deed restrictions would be filed as well. And one of the nice things about this is the city can consider this property abandoned after 1 year of inactivity, as opposed to having to wait 3 years and through the foreclosure process. So we could get started on day 366 on this, and I think that's very, very good for the land in case there were something to go wrong. So if we go to that next slide, Kathy, and thanks for doing that, you can see in total, you can see the three different sections here, that the pre-built, the active operation, and the end of life is all addressed within our ordinance. But before I ask you to set a public hearing and before I ask you to consider the ordinance in front of you, I wanted to make sure you had a little bit of background and guidance. Obviously, the planning board did a deep dive into this. Obviously, we haven't provided that for council quite that deep, so I wanted to give you at least the highlights, give you an opportunity to synthesize the information. Either ask questions now or come back and ask questions after the public hearing.
Thank you, Fonda. Any questions or comments?
I have one question. First of all, thank you for this, the charts, graphs. It's all wonderful the way it's laid out. It makes it very easy to read and follow. Usually a municipality can make something more restrictive, not less. The 200-foot notification pre-construction, council, if they elected, could make that 500 feet or something if they wanted to.
Most likely, yeah. Most of what we did was follow the model ordinance. When I did share the markup document, we have, with our planning consultants, have asked for a number of more restrictive items. Without having it in front of me and to do the comparison of what that is, I'm sure that wouldn't be a problem, but I'll double check on that. I want to make sure you have the right answer there.
I appreciate it.
My question's kind of related. It says here, mandatory public hearing with printed notice and direct mailings to all neighbors within 200 feet. Maybe it's not the same apples to apples, but it says 300 feet on the page before that. It has to be 300 feet from.
I believe the number we have is,
Repeat that, I couldn't hear that.
On the page, I'm not sure which number it is, but this one. Can you see that? All right, this is 200 feet, and then on the page just prior to that, it says 300 feet. It has to be 300 feet away from a residential or occupied building.
yeah, I believe we have 200 feet in there. My guess would be the 300 is one of my fat finger errors where I hit the 3 instead of the 2.
Oh, okay.
But we'll clarify all of that for you.
So I have a question. When it comes to the foreclosure proceedings and things, where does the county sit on this? With the sort of the new deal that we have going with the county and the county taking over property and things like that. Do they have to be a part of this as well? In all of this?
They do not need to. That strictly has to do with whether the entity is paying taxes or not. I could see a situation where they weren't paying taxes, but that takes 3 years to cycle through. And if the entity does pay its taxes, then they have absolutely no reason there. We'll have to address that as they happen on a case-by-case basis based on the details of that. But if the city wishes to take that property over after that 365 days of inactivity, the city is certainly able to do that and to do the cleanup.
Okay.
Okay, any other questions or comments?
So it looks, I'm just quickly Googling it, but it looks like the only time this is a health risk concern is if there's a fire.
I think most 99% of the situations, that's probably true. I could see a situation where if the battery energy storage system itself is not kept and maintained properly and maybe water leaks in and then there's some chemical discharge from that and it gets into the ground, that could be an issue as well. And there's probably others. I'm not a complete expert on battery energy storage, but I think you're right. 99% of the situations that we're worried about is going to be fire protection.
And these fires are difficult to put out, I understand.
Well, not speaking for the chief, but the way I understand it, they are incredibly difficult to put out.
You
You
can't
can't
put
put
them
them
out.
out.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
They
And
just have to burn
how-
out.
Sorry, John.
And they just have to burn themselves out.
It's called thermal runaway.
Yeah.
You just cool it with water.
How often does that happen?
Very rare.
But that's why they have to have that standby, correct?
Correct. Yep.
Professional in that area that has that equipment.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Okay, thank you for that report. Next, city manager will talk to us and brief us about the East David Street project.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Later on in items for council action, we will be asking you to accept and award a bid for the sewer portion of the East David Street project. But before we do that, I thought it was helpful and important and valuable to kind of go through the project and maybe some of the numbers so that you understood where some of those bid numbers come from. So Kathy, if you go to the next slide, we have a simple map for those who are not aware of where the project is taking place. A little bit of history on the project. Even before I arrived at the city, this stretch of East Davis Street has been a challenge and a problem. It's a small area that's required a lot of attention and a lot of resources for the city.
My apologies, new phone.
The city has continually sought funding to rehabilitate the street and the below-ground infrastructure that goes along with it. One of the strategies, and I thought it was a good strategy, was to split the project into two and look at part of it as a water project and part of it as a sewer project, and that gives you double the funding opportunities. The water funding never materialized. This never scored well enough to get funding, but the sewer part of that was funded. And if you'll recall last year, probably about this time, we recommended and council agreed for DPW to do the below surface water work in-house to be able to try and save some money. And I think we were successful with that. We'll see that later on. What's left is the sewer portion of the work below ground, road restoration, and then sidewalks and curbs. So that's what the bid that you'll be asked to approve will cover. So if we go to the next slide, Kathy. I'll go one more. Thank you. What I have is I've got a breakdown of budget to actual on the water and then the budget to projected numbers on the sewer side of things. And as you can see, if you tally it all the way down, the budget on the water project was almost $1.9 million. It's going to come in under $1.2 million. Projection on the sewer project, the budget was slightly over $2.6 million, and it's going to come in at just over $2.4 million. So when you do the math on that, this funding strategy saved the taxpayers almost $1 million, $900,000. Kathy, if you go to the next slide, please. The challenge here is that how the bid falls between water and sewer. So EFC, Environmental Facilities Corporation, said, yes, we will fund the sewer project, but we can't fund the water project. And some of the road restoration work, some of the sidewalk work, some of the curbing work, some of it falls within sewer and some of it falls within the water portion. Or I shouldn't say it falls within the water portion, but because it doesn't fall in the sewer portion, they're not going to pay for it, right? And so right now, best estimate based on the bids are it's about $770,000 that the city would need to come up with in a local share. And again, that's mostly for road restoration. And so I wanted to make sure when you vote on this that you understand where the numbers are coming from and where the dollars are most likely going to come from. So Kathy, if we go, thank you, to the next slide. Let's just assume that gap is about $700,000 because Shane and I are going to try and get some of the numbers a little lower with some different strategies. So let's just say, for an example, we're about $700,000 short. In our operating budget in the water fund, we have $100,000 for appropriation to go to the reserve and $90,000 in contingency. I would recommend that we leverage those dollars to bring that gap a little lower. That leaves about $510,000, which we can split, whether it's 50-50 or a different percentage between CHIPS and utilization of the water fund balance. If we did a 50-50 split, the chart on the right would show the effect of the water fund balance. At the beginning of the year, it was just over $3.3 million. If we take that $250,000 out, you're just going to be under $3.1 million. Obviously, it's council's purview determining how much of CHIPS versus how much of the fund balance we would utilize, and we'll certainly ask for that at the appropriate time. But I just wanted to show you the levers that we will leverage to be able to make that payment. Again, this is an investment in an area of the city that needs some attention. And by doing the project in this manner, we save the taxpayers about $1 million. But there's no free lunch, so obviously some of these costs have to come from somewhere. And we wanted to identify areas where we could pay for the rest of the project. I always told you that I would not bring you a project without having a plan to pay for them. This way, there's no due tos and due froms at the end of the year, and I will continue to do that as long as I'm your city manager. How council decides to allocate between CHIPS and fund balance, it is certainly in your purview to do. Our recommendation at this point in time is kind of a 50-50 split. Seems to be fair. We do have some rollover in CHIPS that we can leverage, and we do have some fund balance. That obviously the water fund balance is stronger than the sewer fund balance, so I worry less about utilizing those dollars as opposed to the general fund or the sewer fund. So with that, I'm happy to open up the floor for questions on this.
I have one. My understanding of infrastructure projects is generally the sewer infrastructure is deeper than the water infrastructure. We've already done the water. Is that going to cause any problems or excess cost problems working around what we've already done?
No, but I can bring that over and ask Shane to comment on that. We certainly talked about that, discussed it, and planned for it. But Shane can give you better detail than I can on that.
No, it won't be an issue. We put the water off into the right of way out of the road completely. We took a new water line, and so it won't be an issue.
They're not on top of each other.
Nope, they got to be, with new standards, they got to be over 10 feet apart.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions or comments?
With the CHIPS funding, do we have an idea of what we would have left over if we use the 255?
Shane, what's our rollover? We gotta be, yeah, we got about $500,000 in rollover, and that doesn't include whatever we get in 2026, right? So we think right now, if numbers stay the same, right, there's no state budget, so we don't know what the number is. I don't believe it's gonna go down any, so we're close to $1 million anyway. And then if the budget comes in with additional CHIPS funding, that would be on top of that.
We've had a really hard winter on the roads, and we've had a lot of people comment about the potholes and just, the destruction that happens with the freeze thaw that we get. So I just wanted to make sure we still are going to have enough maybe to do some more paving on some of those streets. So thank you for that answer.
Yeah.
So in the use of the CHIPS funds, we're not, I'll say, sacrificing any other planned use or any other project for which CHIPS funding was planned?
I'll defer to Shane on that, but you still have your $1 million that you would normally get to be able to do planning on.
Right.
Yeah, we knew that this was going to happen.
Any other questions or comments? Personally, I think this is a reasonable proposal for council to consider and support.
Yeah.
Everyone feel the same way?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Needed to be done.
Okay, see Councilor Powers nodding. Okay, so I think you have council support on this strategy.
Thank you.
All right, next we have two proclamations. The first is a proclamation to note National Library Week. Whereas libraries are not just about what they have for people, but what they do for and with people. Whereas libraries have long served as trusted and treasured institutions, and library workers and librarians fuel efforts to better their communities, campuses, and schools. Whereas librarians are leaders in their institutions and organizations, in their communities, in the nation, and in the world. Whereas librarians continue to lead the way in leveling the playing field for all who seek information and access to technologies. Whereas libraries and librarians look beyond their traditional roles and provide transformative opportunities for education, employment, entrepreneurship, empowerment, and engagement, as well as new services that connect closely with patrons' needs. Whereas libraries and librarians lead their communities in innovation, providing STEAM programming, maker spaces, and access and training for new technologies. Whereas libraries are pioneers supporting democracy and affecting social change with a commitment to providing equitable access to information for all library users, regardless of race, ethnicity, creed, ability, sexual orientation, gender identity, or socioeconomic status. Whereas libraries lead in working with diverse communities, including people of color, immigrants, and people with disabilities, offering services and educational resources that transform communities, open minds, and promote inclusion and diversity. Whereas libraries, librarians, library workers, and supporters across America are celebrating National Library Week, now therefore be it resolved that I, Mayor Michael Tooley, proclaim National Library Week, April 19th to the 25th, 2026. I encourage all residents to visit the Ogdensburg Public Library and explore what's new at your library and engage with your librarian. Because of you and our library leaders, libraries transform. In witness whereof I have hereunto set my hand and caused the seal to be affixed. We'll need these attested, but at this time, I'd like to invite Library Director Penny Kerfian and members of the Library Board for a photo opportunity with council in recognition of this proclamation. If you want to come back and join.
No cover up.
No. She's hiding.
Okay, fantastic. So ready, couple, so 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, and 3.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Yes, for testing.
Yeah, it's all right.
Thank you. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Slide this down.
Yep.
Thank you. All right, our second proclamation is in recognition of Arbor Day. Whereas in 1872, J. Sterling Morton proposed to the Nebraska Board of Agriculture that a special day be set aside for the planting of trees. And whereas this holiday called Arbor Day was first observed with the planting of more than 1 million trees in Nebraska, and Arbor Day is now observed throughout the nation and the world. And whereas trees reduce the erosion of our precious topsoil by wind and water, cut heating and cooling costs, moderate the temperature, clean the air, produce oxygen, and provide habitat for wildlife. And whereas trees are a renewable resource giving us paper, wood for our homes, fuel for our fires, and countless other wood products, whereas trees in our city increase property values, enhance the economic vitality of business areas, and beautify our community, and whereas trees, wherever they are planted, are a source of joy and spiritual renewal, and whereas the city of Ogdensburg has been recognized as a Tree City USA by the National Arbor Day Foundation and desires to continue its tree planting practices. Now therefore, I, Michael Tooley, Mayor of the City of Ogdensburg, do hereby proclaim April 24th, 2026 as Arbor Day in the city of Ogdensburg. And I urge all citizens to celebrate Arbor Day and to support efforts to protect our trees and woodlands. And further, I urge all citizens to plant trees to gladden the heart and promote the well-being of this and future generations. In witness whereof I have hereunto set my hand and cause this seal to be affixed. Right, we have 2 public hearings tonight. The first is regarding a local law to amend Chapter 199 of the Ogdensburg Municipal Code entitled Taxation. It is going to be Bill 27, and I will open that public hearing now. If anyone attending in person would like to speak regarding the public hearing, please come down to the podium and you will have 5 minutes to speak. Now, if anyone attending remotely would like to speak regarding the public hearing, please use the raise hand feature in the upper right-hand corner of your screen, and you will have 5 minutes to speak. I believe it's in the lower left-hand corner of your screen.
Oh, it is, Mayor. You're right. Thank you for that. I do not see any hands raised.
Will I declare this public hearing closed? The next public hearing is regarding an ordinance amending the following sections of Chapter 157 of the Augsburg Municipal Code entitled Peddling and Soliciting, Section 157-3 entitled License Required, Section 157-4 entitled License Application, and Section 157-12 entitled License Fees. It is going to be Bill number 28. I will open that public hearing now. If anyone attending in person would like to speak regarding the public hearing, please come down to the podium and you will have 5 minutes to speak.
Good evening.
Hi.
Laura Rothel, co-chair of the Augsburg International Seaway Festival since 1984. The fees that the city of Augsburg have been charged for peddlers has been the same for probably about as long as I've been the co-chair of the festival. And in comparison to other communities, especially communities on the river, our fees have been quite low as far as the city fees. The Seaway Festival does have fees that we charge for our vendors when they come. And we appropriate the fees according to the size of the unit, what the people are selling. I've done this for years. I've worked food wagons, I've worked concession stands. The people continually would make a profit. We're not out to make things that they would not benefit for coming. But also, along with the revenue, is sales tax. So raising the fees that we charge raises the sales tax, which benefits the city of Ogdensburg. The one part of the ordinance that we're talking about, they have the Seaway Festival listed as most of the events in the Greenbelt area. I would ask the council to include the Ford Street portion, because a lot of the issues that we have are on Parade Day with unlicensed peddlers. I, as the chairperson for the vendors, have to get a permit from the the New York State Department of Health. I have to list all of the vendors. I have to make sure that they have the background checks. I have to send them through the Ogdensburg Police Department. And we make sure that everybody is on the up and up and everything is the way it's supposed to be. When people show up and vent outside of the authority that the Department of Health has given to me, and they're at my event, I've been told that it could be my fault. I could be charged because I allowed it to happen. There hasn't been a whole lot of teeth that any of the organizations like the police department or the city have been able to do to kind of control the situation. And I think that the changes that are proposed will help to make everything black and white. T's will be crossed, I's will be dotted, and there won't be any questions or any issues with anyone. Any questions? Yes.
If, let's say, a non-licensed vendor selling hot dogs out of whatever, somebody gets sick, food poisoning, you could be liable for that because
they're not on my permit and I'm allowing them to be there.
Okay.
But without the backing of the city saying that that's our area, I don't have a leg to stand on.
Right. Okay.
Like a free country, people can come up and start selling something. How it doesn't seem fair to hold you responsible for that.
I know. There's New York State.
So what can we do to help?
We can discuss that when the resolution comes up.
Thank you.
Thank you, Laura. Anyone else in chambers? Now, if anyone attending remotely would like to speak regarding the public hearing, please use the raise hand feature in the lower left-hand corner of your screen, and you'll have 5 minutes to speak.
I do not see any hands raised, Mayor.
So I declare this public hearing closed. That brings us to personal appearance. At this time, if anyone attending in person would like to address council, please come down to the podium and you'll have 5 minutes to speak.
Hi, Tanya Snyder, Home-Based Business. As you'll all see, there's 2 folders that I set in front of you. This is what we presented to the planning board the other night, and they didn't want the information, so we figured it was just easier to bring it to you guys and then have it, and it saved Kathy time to print it all out. But I would still like it to be recorded in tonight's meeting. Good evening, City Council, Mayor, City Manager. I see on the agenda tonight has home-based business being discussed again. I just have a few comments that I would like to make. Since day one, I never said I would not pay a fee for having a home-based business. All I've asked from the beginning is whatever ordinance that is in place, that it be enforced equally. As of today, it is not. I do not understand how council cannot see the whole issue in this matter is the enforcement of the ordinance. Anyone from the home-based business owners to council, to the mayor, to the city manager, and even the planning board has admitted that there are issues within the enforcement. The time and money that needs to be spent to enforce this tells me that no one is going to have to take the time to enforce it, as this is what is happening now. What action is council going to take to ensure that the current ordinance or any further ordinance is going to be enforced? If the council is not going to put a plan in place to ensure enforcement, then this whole thing is a waste of time. I don't think it matters what the council decides, as it is not being enforced anyways. Once it is decided, it will fall to the wayside and there will be no further enforcement on the small group of people paying. Will be the only ones paying still. Last week, the chairman from the planning board stated, if you're making money from your home, then it's a business. This has been long enough. Make a decision. If you're going to continue to charge home-based businesses a fee, make sure that it's being enforced. If council can't ensure the enforcement of being done, then the council just needs to eliminate it all or not charge the home-based business fees. Thank you.
Thank you, Tanya.
Good evening. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak tonight. My name is Tony Jo Berg, and I am a New York State registered group family daycare provider here in our community. I've been providing childcare in my home for over 15 years. I'm here respectfully to ask you to reconsider the proposed increase in sewer and water rates for home-based businesses. Having a successful childcare program for many years means we have provided quality childcare to this community, with people knowing, respecting, and trusting us with their most precious gifts. We want to continue to serve this community. We want to continue to provide a vital service to families who depend on us every day, but policies like this make it harder to do so. Is this proposal fair? Is it fair to businesses that are using zero extra water or sewer? Is it fair to a child care provider in her home with no swimming pool, no water, no garden to water, and 95% of her clients wearing diapers? This proposal has not been fair from the start. This proposal has not been enforceable from the start. Something needs to change. I respectfully urge the council members to reconsider and not support these increased fees for home-based businesses, the little people who make our community better. Thank you for your time, your consideration, and your service to our community.
Thank you, Joan.
Good evening, Arlene Kaya, daycare provider. Okay, you went in front of the planning board. They couldn't make any recommendations. But again, I'll say it, home-based business is a business, period. But at the meeting, the chairperson said, if someone is making money off a business, it's a business. They should be paying. Think about it. So that would make it easier to enforce this in the city. Stop the tier A, stop the tier B, stop the games. This has been a joke. I give planning board a folder, I believe you got it tonight when Tanya handed them out, about home-based businesses. This has been handled wrong. It was never enforced at all. Look in the folders. I'm sure you would have to agree with me. I would think. I asked that the city should be this should be suspended until enforcement is consistent to every home-based business in Augsburg. We have water rates coming up to a small group of home-based businesses, as you will see in your folder. No letters went to any council members. Stop searching for nickels and stepping over dollars. Lots of dollars are being lined in one person's pocket in a short time. Why no enforcement in 6 months? The old ordinance couldn't be enforced. Why do you think the new one is going to be enforced? So not sure why you keep trying to pass something that isn't going to be 100% enforced in the city. The codes feels expecting any ordinance will be 100% is not realistic for several reasons. Well, and too realistic, they can enforce it in the city at 100%, then suspend it. Definition is a home-based business is a business. If any home is making money, it's a business. As the city manager looked into the meters, he talked about them at the March planning board meeting. Inconsistent enforcement has gone on long enough. Council can put a stop to this matter. Remember, council was voted in by taxpayers. This is not about water and sewer. It's just the way the city manager wants to bill it. You can override him. Remember, City Hall is not a one-man show. The selective enforcement is unacceptable and creates the appearance and reality of discrimination. A lot of time, staff, resources spent addressing this issue. If you're going to pass anything regarding home-based business, it's all home-based businesses making money. You need to really know what you're going to do. Stop picking and choosing. Be ready to enforce it 100% in the city. Management going to dot I's and cross T's when they say not enough manpower. Management needs to update council monthly on how many businesses are being charged, because I will still be doing my part. Home-based business will be enforced equally into all home-based business in the city of Augsburg 100%. This has been one of the biggest problems from day one with home-based business enforcement and discrimination. So it's time for council to do what is best for taxpayers, or you make a move or we do. Taxpayers, you are on council for a reason. Or maybe the city could put a moratorium on home-based business fees to better develop a comprehensive plan to address home-based business in the city. Council should be already done this work on home-based business. It's been a joke. You say you want to grow the economic, and this have a bigger negative effect on that than the income. You will earn from the city. The long-term negative effects will outride the little bit of income that they will take in charging the home-based businesses. Thank you.
Thank you, Arlene. Anyone else in chambers?
Good evening, Mayor, City Council. Wendy Hamilton. I am not a small business home owner, home occupier, but I am a taxpayer. And I think you've heard from the home occupations, but I don't think you've heard from taxpayers. So here I'm going to let you know what I think about all this in a minute. Okay. So at the public hearing on February 23rd, we heard statements from the impacted home businesses, right? So we heard that enforcement somehow equals fairness. So not enforcing it is not fair. We also heard the suggestion that if you can't enforce it, then you should just drop it. You know, if we can't make everybody pay for it, then we should just drop it altogether. Well, I think we can dismiss that argument because there are many laws that we do not enforce equally because we're not able to. And they happen to be, a lot of them happen to be traffic laws. So there's stop signs, there's traffic lights, there's speed laws. Does everybody obey those laws? No. Are we able to catch everybody? No. But are we going to eliminate the laws? No. So I think that argument can be set aside. I think we also heard from all the daycare operators who think they should be treated differently because they provide some sort of needed, and somebody called it essential service. And they're already regulated by the state, and they can't afford these additional costs. Home daycare is the very definition of a home business. They can't operate it anywhere else, otherwise then they're some other level or tier of daycare. They have enjoyed for years not paying this additional water and sewer. I think that I think the original intent, if you go back and look, the original intent of the additional water and sewer was to address the increasing addition of apartments being put in these bigger homes and the increased ancillary use of homes as businesses. So it was a way to distribute or to, in some fair way, put the burden where it's being used, because otherwise the people who do not have those home businesses, who do not have pools, etc., we're paying the brunt of the water and sewer. I live alone. I subsidize, the family of 10 down the street. And I get it because we don't have meters. So I accept that. Just as these businesses who, when they started to operate in their home, should have known that there would be, because it's been on the books, an additional water and sewer fee. And to now come out and say, well, it's not fair. Well, did you not know? Why didn't you know? And were you just, saying, oh, I didn't know, so, ignorance is bliss. But we also heard someone say that home businesses are the backbone of the economy. And I would suggest that sort of the opposite is true. These businesses do not pay any sales tax because we can't regulate that. And many of the services that they provide are not taxable in this state anyway. So they're not paying any sales tax. Statistically, about 10% of home businesses actually grow into a commercial space eventually. 10%. And if that actually, as a statistic or an average for the country, is true in this city, if you remove the number of daycares in the total businesses that they've been foiling, it leaves us with about 20 businesses. I can think of two who've gone from doing it at home to a retail space. And in fact, the opposite is true, right? We have one business that wasn't a commercial business and now is a home business. So I don't think they're the backbone of our economy. Home businesses benefit the owner and their finite limited number of customers. So home businesses can deduct a proportional rate of, the cost of their home, that's their taxes, the running of that home. They can deduct that against the income they derive from that business. Typical taxpayers who don't do that don't have that opportunity. May I continue?
Please wrap up. So
I would also say that if you look at how the actual local law is constructed, it's under 221, as opposed to being a standout, its own chapter. And I think it's confusing to have all of that under 221, which is zoning. I think there's already things in there that describe what can be done and not done in each of the rest of the districts, and you could beef that up. But I think, to be clear and to help everybody understand, it should be its own section, because we don't have a water and sewer fee problem. We have a business licensing problem. We don't license our businesses, and we should.
Thank you, Wendy. Anyone else in chambers? Now, if anyone attending remotely would like to address council, please use the raise hand feature. The city clerk will recognize and unmute one person at a time, and you have 5 minutes.
The first individual is registered as Greg McNamara, and I have enabled his mic. Mr. McNamara, can you hear me?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Hi, the only right thing to do with this whole situation here is to just end the charge. The reason this charge is here, and I've said this in the past, and hopefully the mayor doesn't cut me off tonight because he doesn't like what I have to say, but this all has to do with your guys' ability to run the city's budget. You've added, you guys, I think that whole rise ordeal, that plan you guys are trying to go, I literally agree with it. You rise fees for everything, you raise the cost of taxes, you raise the amount of employees. You definitely believe in the term rise for sure, but it's not the way you presented it to us. And it's a shame to see this battle continue to go on. These crap resolutions come up that make no sense. The city manager came from a county that has a $65 million a year budget. It was in good standing when he was there. It's in good standing today. I can't wrap my head around how, well, the school, I might be wrong, the school gets 55 cents of every dollar of like a 21 around-ish $1 million budget. So he's budgeting about $10 million roughly, I would say, to run the city. How can you not figure that out to balance that budget? We're in a shortfall in every single department. That's why you guys are adding these charges and doing this to people. The last administration warned us about this. Exactly what they said to the public would happen is what has happened this entire administration. And the city's not going to get nicer until you guys are running the city the complete wrong way. Y'all just need to get voted out. Thank you.
Thank you, Greg.
Bear with me here. I do not see any other hands raised.
Okay, so that brings us to correspondence. We have any correspondence this evening?
We do not.
Brings us to the consent agenda. That the claims as enumerated in general fund warrant number 7-2026 in the amount of $881,396.95, and library warrant number 7-2026 in the amount of $0, and capital fund warrant number 7-2026 in the amount of $48,515.56, and community development fund warrant number 7-2026 in the amount of $120.98, and community renewal fund warrant number 7-2026 in the amount of $0, as audited, being the same hereby are ordered paid. I so move.
Second.
Kathy, please call the roll.
Mayor Tulley?
Yes.
Counselor Sully?
Yes.
Counselor Powers?
Yes.
Counselor Scamperly?
Yes.
Counselor Stevenson? Yes. Counselor Tebow?
Yes.
Counselor Trim?
Yes.
Approved.
We have one appointment tonight. I'll make a motion to appoint James Flood to fill the unexpired term of John Pinkerton on the City of Ogdensburg Board of Ethics. Term to begin April 13, 2026, and then December 31st, 2026.
Second.
Any discussion? Kathy, please call the roll.
Counselor Scamperly?
Yes.
Counselor Stevenson? Yes. Counselor Tebow?
Yes.
Counselor Trim?
Yes.
Mayor Tulley?
Yes.
Counselor Sully?
Yes.
Counselor Powers?
Yes.
Approved.
Brings us to items for council action. Our first item of business is bill number 12, which was tabled on February 23rd, 2026. I will make a motion to take bill number 12 off the table.
Second.
Kathy, please call the roll.
Counselor Stevenson? Yes. Counselor Tebow?
Yes.
Counselor Trim?
Yes.
Mayor Tulley?
Yes.
Counselor Sully?
Yes.
Counselor Powers?
Yes.
Counselor Scamperly?
Yes.
Approved.
All right, I'll just make an introductory comment. As was stated, I think, from the podium, council had referred this to the planning board for a request for a recommendation about the proposal on the table. At its meeting last week, the planning board passed a motion not to make a recommendation. So with that, the chair recognizes Councilor John Tebow.
I thought a lot about this, met with Mr. Tully, and I came up with just a brief summary of my new proposal. Tier A and B eliminated, replaced with a definition
John,
of,
excuse me, can we introduce your resolution first?
oh, yes.
So
So where would that be? Let me see here. The resolution is
the
to,
motion is to amend
motion to amend the resolution.
as per the
as per-
document on the table.
As per the document on the table.
All right, is there a second to that? All right, now please. go.
No, okay, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Again, these are just highlighted bullet points. Tier A and Tier B are eliminated and replaced with the definition of a home-based business. All references to tiers and the remainder of the proposal are removed. Applications will be required. Special use permit to be issued for, good for 3 years for a fee of $150 at the time of issuance and renewal. Home-based businesses having customers, employees, et cetera, required to have satisfactory building safety inspections before issuance of special use permit. Exemptions remain for those inspected by the state and federal regulatory agencies. I'm assuming those will be daycares. And the opportunity for appeal remain in place, and the utility surcharge for Tier B home businesses would be deleted entirely. That's
Is there anything I'd like to add? to that?
everything in a nutshell.
Okay, questions or comments on the motion to amend?
I have one concern, both with the original proposal and with the amendment, is I think there needs to be some way to determine an additional fee for businesses who are using additional water. You know, if somebody, like a hairdresser, is using a lot more water than the family business or the daycare business or anything like that, and everything we're doing leaves that out. I agree with John's proposal to simplify things and make things go on. That's the one area that concerns me. I don't have a resolution or anything to offer to change that at this time. But
Right. I think until there's meters, that's almost impossible to do anything with.
So, go ahead, Jim.
I just wanted to ask a matter of procedure. So if we approve these amendments, then we'll be speaking to the entire motion after that.
Unless there are further motions to amend.
So personally, I disagree with the amendment. I disagree with deleting the two-tier system. I believe the whole thing started out, and I've gotten many calls from businesses who express some of the same ideas that Wendy Hamilton expressed tonight, and she brings up some great points, and so did they. Same sort of arguments that have been stressed by city staff, et cetera. I do think I can agree to registering businesses within the community. Wendy brought that point up tonight. Businesses in the commercial district seem to think it's unfair that they're paying the higher water rates. And that was the whole purpose and the whole goal here, was to try and provide equity. I agree wholeheartedly with the people that have spoken. Enforcement is the issue. Enforcement, these people don't have a problem paying the extra $180. That was reduced from like $1,200 or something crazy like that, but just to pay something. And so it doesn't seem to be the issue. The issue is enforcement. I don't think that's going to go away. I think that the whole principle behind this and the foundation is the two-tier systems of those that are using the extra water versus those that are not. And it pulls the carpet out of the whole argument from the beginning to eliminate it. And no offense, but it just seems to do that and to charge the fee is for businesses that aren't using water and things like that. Or I thought a $30 administration fee was fine for any business for under the Tier A, and then and so basically I'm not going to support the amendment. So
Can I speak to that? I think, I love the simplicity of what John's put forward. I understand what you're saying about the two tiers and trying to differentiate between who's using more water, like Storm is saying. It just, it creates an environment where it's a subjective judgment call. And that, it's like no matter how you call it, somebody's gonna have an issue. And then this circus is gonna continue. And so like, I mean.
It's not going away.
Well, I mean, you know, people feel strongly, they have a right to keep it going. So, but how do you address that in a way that kind of takes that piece of it out, and the simplicity is helpful. And Wendy, that was brilliant, and I think it was brilliant, you know, that we can't be hung for the inability to enforce all of the laws. I think as a city government and as a police force, they certainly do their best. And as code, they do their best, and people are going to slip through the cracks.
I just think the proposal is easier to enforce. There's less cracks to slip through. Simpler the better. This tier A, tier B idea, to me, it's unenforceable. You can't, unless you've got somebody that's going to go into these houses and say, and I don't think we want to be doing that,
right,
knocking on people's doors. We have a list of businesses, and hopefully they're honest enough to say that I'm a business and I'll pay the $150. It's every 3 years, it's a $50 a year fee. I think it's the most fair way to do it. It's the most enforceable way to do it. And again, you might get a few businesses here and there that are going to say, you know what, I'll close my doors and go work out of my basement. They have that option now. I don't want to discourage anybody or encourage anybody from doing that, but I just think the simpler the better.
Your Honor, I have a couple comments on the amendment, and then I do have comments once we resolve the amendment on the bigger motion. I'm not opposed to a single system. I think it does take the subjectivity out of it and the human element. It's either home-based business or it's not. I think that we're dropping the cost to do business to make it so much less expensive to do it at home that we are encouraging people to do that. And our downtowns can't do that. And the businesses that have brick and mortar need to have some kind of balance there because they too are experiencing a lot of expenses. So I think that the $50 a year, that's not a lot for a license fee or for a special permit fee to do that. I think that that is part of the concern with encouraging home-based versus brick and mortar. That to me is very light. I do like the idea of the one-tier system, but I think the biggest element we're seeing here is the change in the neighborhoods. So what does the impact of someone having a business in a single-family residential neighborhood, what is that, does that impact? And that's where some of the other items in the home-based business motion will come into play. You know, deliveries, do they need to have deliveries in their single-family neighborhood? Do they want to have traffic of people pulling in their driveways or parking in front of their house? Do they want to have that kind of element? So we have to be very mindful of that beyond a fee. I don't think this is really about the revenue to the city as it is to make it more equitable with business use in an area that isn't typically supposed to have business use. I mean, that's what it is, right? They're not really supposed to have business in a single family residential neighborhood. That's part of the balance. So while I do support that, so it takes away some of the subjectivity, I think the fee involved is very light.
Now, when you say deliveries, like a UPS truck pulling up to the house and delivering, is that what you mean? Or do you mean like a tractor trailer full of stuff pulling up?
Oh, we don't know. You can't regulate that. You don't know what that home-based business is going to be.
Right.
If it's a contractor being there, they could have materials being supplied there. It could be someone that produces something that they sell via the mail, and they could have to have regular deliveries of supplies. We can't regulate that. So it is an increased traffic that is not residential traffic.
Like the UPS trucks that fly around the city all the time.
And they could be coming there five times a day versus one time to the neighborhood.
True.
That's the different kind of deliveries. You could have people dropping off payments, picking up product. It decreases the traffic. So I do believe that home-based businesses are very integral to our economy in the city, but I also think that so are the brick and mortar, and we have to be careful of that balance.
Anyone else?
Yeah, Mayor.
Yes.
At what point does a home-based business become a business? Are we looking at a percentage of uses? Is it 80-20 or 20-80? Or 50-50? At some point in time, the business, if it's large enough, takes over, and the resident living there is just incidental to them running a business. And I don't know the real way to address that, but it's something we need to be cognizant of.
I think that's a good point, and I think that's why I'm not going to support this. You know, there's lots of that language I see talking about entirety of the home and things. And I mean, I see people that are contractors. They answer the phone, "Can you come and look at my house?" And why should they pay an extra fee? They're not using water. They're not using, I don't mind the registration fee, that $30 registration fee to list businesses within Augsburg. Maybe we can even, that's an administration fee, and maybe we can even use that to help businesses. But, and it's like John said earlier, without water meters, I've been saying it since day one, there's a lot of question here, but the biggest thing is enforceability. And I don't know if we go through the county and look for DBAs throughout the city, and that's where we start, things like that. But I think there's better options. And one of the speakers tonight suggested that even if we pass this, we hold off a little while until we get a good solid list that's maybe even 80 or 90% enforceable rather than non-enforceable at all, because it isn't a perfect world. So
I just have a hunch that no matter how we resolve this tonight, either us or a future city council is going to be back looking at it again in the future. But I'm not opposed to seeing how this works out and seeing how it goes.
Okay.
And can pass it down the road again if we have to. So.
I do want to address the misnomer about the meters, though. We've heard that, and we know that when meters are put in, which eventually we will have meters in the city, it's not a straight what you use and what you don't use. And it's not straight 1 meter, 1 fee per house. That EDUs, equivalent dwelling units, are assigned to different buildings. So you could have a house with a home-based business being determined to be 1.25 of an EDU and paying 1.25 of a water usage. You could have an apartment house that has 4 units, now not paying 4 water and sewer rates, which they currently do now, but instead paying 2.5. So the EDUs will come into place when we have to make a decision with meters when they are enacted, which it's coming eventually.
Mayor, if I can.
Yes, Council Powers.
Thank you. A lot of good dialogue tonight. Ms. Hamilton had made some good points there. I commend Councilor Tebow for attacking this issue in the manner in which he did and an attempt to simplify it. We had a public hearing earlier this evening related to vendors at the Seaway Festival, and a citizen had pointed out to me just now via text that we'll be charging vendors more in fees than we will for home-based businesses. I've got this is unenforceable, is it? Yes and no, but a lot of things are unenforceable. And unfortunately, until we get a solid LWRP in our hands and allow us to be able to attack and not attack, but address these issues that have been brought up for, I don't know, Ms. Snyder could tell me probably 3 years now, like 3 years this has been ongoing. So, with that being said, I have some issues with the amendments as Councilor Scantily pointed out. And with that public hearing related to a bill that we're going to be addressing here with vendors, that kind of sticks with me, and I do, to Councilor Stevenson's point as well, I recognize the fact of, the aspect that it could have on brick and mortar business. So I commend Councilor Tebow for attempting this, but unfortunately, I can't support the amendment. Thank you.
I mean, I lost my train of thought. The unenforceableness of this, I don't know. I think this is much more enforceable. It's simpler. Until we get whatever the LWRP set in place, this is a nice stopgap. It keeps everything kind of smooth, and we can move on to different issues maybe. And I think this helps. If not, hey, vote against it. It's fine too.
My own observations, and I've informed Councilor Tebow ahead of this. I mean, I don't support the amendment he has proposed, in part because I do believe that the home-based business ordinance should have a utility surcharge involved with it. Absent spending more time reevaluating language, I think we need to maintain the Tier A and Tier B definition as is proposed. I do think the proposal presented to us by management is an improvement in that now we will have home safety inspections required of home businesses where there's employees and or clients or customers or whatever. There is language in here that references short-term rentals and bed and breakfast, which were not part of the definition in the section of water that currently defines what type of home business is assessed the fee that is currently being charged, whether it be considered water, sewer, or some sort of business operation. The definition in the home business Tier B expands the definition, or expands the number of home businesses that will be covered under the ordinance. So in other words, the definition saying a home business activity conducted within a dwelling or accessory building that involves one or more of the following. So it doesn't require exclusively that the activity be done entirely within the house. So now if a homeowner is running a personal business for which they might have an own office, but they're providing services at other places in the city or outside the city, those type of businesses are now considered a home business, whereas in the past they haven't been. So where there's been a required, to the idea of a business as a business, this comes closer to addressing that belief. And as I see this playing out, presuming, we adopt something within the next, 4 to 6 weeks, the enforcement date we have set up previously for July 1, which again is subject to further evaluation, I guess. But it would give management time to try to identify and work with home businesses to file the application. Is going to be required because after July 1st, if a home business, if a business arrangement in a home falls under the ordinance and that homeowner hasn't filed the application to request the permit, then they are subject to a fine. Okay, so there's teeth in this with regards to enforcement. And so for those reasons, as our next step, I will not be voting in support of Councilor Tebow's motion to amend. Is there any other discussion?
I would say that I favor the one fee and no tier system, but I can't support it in its entirety, so I will not support the motion.
Any other questions or comments?
Jen, is that around the issue between the brick and mortar and the home-based business?
We're reducing it significantly from what it originally was, which was not equitable.
Yeah.
Then we're bringing it down to something that was reasonable, and now we're reducing it by a third from that. And that's a concern.
So that $150, is that like a,
It was an application fee every 3 years.
yeah, I mean, that's super low.
And raise it.
Can we raise it? What if we made that something?
Well, if Councilor Tebow's motion to amend isn't supported, then we're back to the language in the ordinance presented to us where there's a $30 permit fee for tier A and a $90 permit fee for tier B.
That's also very low.
Any other discussion on the motion to amend?
We can't amend this currently tonight, I don't know all the rules, to make it, maybe a more fair fee, like a little bit higher fee. We'd have to come back to the table.
No, we can make any amendment. You put any proposal to amend you want on the table tonight.
Well, Jen, what would you think would be equitable?
I think the fee that's being charged right now is equitable. It's just shouldn't be tied to water and sewer because it's a business fee. It doesn't necessarily have to be based on usage of water.
Right. And what is to remind me of the fee right now?
It's 182?
Yeah.
182 right now, but that floats when the water and sewer rates go up. So if the water and sewer rates go up, the current plan, which is also the plan for tier B, correct me if I'm wrong, Fonda, for tier B, that would also increase with the other plan, right? Because the formula?
That is correct, because the formula in this ordinance is the same formula that council has already decided on, and so we just kept the same fee. And that does change annually. Could go down, never know.
Wishful thinking.
No, but again, while there's going to be an inflationary increase likely in most years, again, listening to suggestions from people involved in home businesses, the council did take action 2 years ago to reduce it significantly from about $1,000 a year down to about now where it is at $183 a year.
Yes, we did. You wouldn't know it. We did.
And we're told that's not the issue, and enforcement from their perspective is an issue. As I look at it, now it's going to be basically city management who will be making the decisions of whether an operation at a home is a home business. We're expecting the application to come in, and if we discover there's a home business that hasn't filed the application and there's enters like this, they're subject to a penalty. So as I envision this rolling out, and I'll let management offer their thoughts about this. I mean, once an ordinance, once the current language is amended with a new ordinance, I would anticipate that we be proactive and that letters will be coming from the city to the homeowners where we believe there are home businesses, with a copy of the application, a cover letter explaining the new ordinance that's in play here, and the expectation that if the entity is, homeowner is operating a business that falls under this ordinance, that they will file the application. And they have until July 1st to do it, absent facing a penalty. And then once a decision is made by the the zone administrator, thank you, there is an appeal process. For if someone feels they've been wrongly judged, they have an appeal process to try to get that decision overturned. Okay, so so in different ways, I do think this is a much stronger ordinance. I do think it's an ordinance easier to enforce because we're not relying on homeowner affidavits anymore, which we chose to take at face value. We are now making management decision, through our research, through our available resources. Again, we're not going to be going door to door and block to block to try to identify what's going on. But as we learn through either websites or we see ads in local media or whatever, that appears that someone has started a home business, we can take advantage of some of the research done by the people who've been speaking to us frequently over the past few months, to try to identify what home businesses what entities might now be home businesses under the new definition, the new ordinance, that didn't necessarily qualify or meet the standard under the current ordinance. So in any event, this sort of leaves where I'll be at the end of the day, but any other questions or comments on Councilor Tebow's motion to amend?
Mayor?
Yes.
I would move to amend Councilor Tebow's amendment to increase the fee to $450 every 3 years.
Well, I was gonna do the same thing. I was going to just hang on. I was gonna offer to make an amendment to the amendment to increase it to the 182 that it currently is.
It is,
No, but it's
his eliminates the utility, but that's a different fee than the special use permit fee.
So what would be, I don't know, it's going to sound high to me.
Well, we have a motion on the floor to amend Councilor Tebow's resolution to increase the applicant special permit fee from $150 to $450. Is there a second to that motion?
I'll make that second.
Any discussion?
Yeah, I want to be convinced that that's fair.
So it's $150 a year. So it sounds like a lot with the $450, but it's less than what it's being charged right now with this current. And it doesn't float, so it's easier to budget for. So when we look at it, what is it, $12 a month, 50 cents, something, $13 a month? No, $14 a month, something like that. It's under $15 a month.
Any further discussion?
So under the current proposal, prior to amendments, the fee for a home-based business where we're attaching it to the water rate, if I'm not mistaken, is less than 50 cents a day, which is about $15 a month.
Wait, can you put that in like an annual, Dan?
$184.
Sorry.
That's the utility.
But that's as a utility fee.
That's a utility surcharge, not the permit fee.
Because it's tagged onto that. So when I hear from business owners who say, and I've heard from several, that it's not fair and that we should pass this fee, and they understand that we've reduced it tremendously from the $1,200 or something that the original code said to the $184 at the request of the home businesses. We took their formula that they presented to us. And so there it is. The only addition is the two-tier system. And I think, personally, I think city staff did a fairly good job. Did a good job considering we don't have water meters, but.
Right. Any further discussion on Councilor Silly's motion to amend Councilor Tebow's motion?
I would agree with that.
Okay, so what we're voting on is Councilor Silly's motion to amend Councilor Tebow's motion to amend to increase the special use permit fee from $150 to $450.
Every 3 years.
Every 3 years.
All right, Kathy, please call the roll.
Counselor Tebow?
Yes.
Counselor Trim?
Yes.
Mayor Tulley?
No?
Counselor Silly?
Yes.
Counselor Powers? You're muted, sir.
No.
Counselor Scamperly?
No.
Counselor Stevenson?
Yes.
Approved.
Any other motions to amend Councilor Tebow's motion to amend? All right, so what we'll be voting on now is Councilor Tebow's motion to amend, which he highlighted with the bullet points, eliminating the Tier A and Tier B, eliminating the utility user surcharge, and the other points he referenced.
Excuse me, Mayor?
Yes.
The audio is a bit wonky here. What was the resolution we just went through?
The resolution we just voted, no, the resolution we just voted on was Counselor Silly recommending an increase in the permit fee.
Thank you. Okay, that's what I thought.
Okay. So now we'll be voting on Counselor Tebow's motion to amend the original Bill 12 as currently amended, which reflects the increase in the special permit fee to $450.
Thank you.
But again, eliminates tier A, tier B, eliminates the utility surcharge. And again, the other points he noted. All right, so I'll confident we know what we're voting.
Well, I have more discussion on the
Okay.
tables, and I'm sorry, but we need to get this right. It's good. So the section B, inspection requirement, if this is going to be part of the amendment, for page 2 that we're looking at here, as condition of approval, home-based businesses whose operations involve one or more of the following shall be required to have a building safety inspection before an issue of a special permit. I have concern, and I've stressed this at the last couple of meetings, about one or more non-resident employees at a home-based business, except for daycare providers, because they do need helpers. And if this is part of the amended, then I want to speak to it. If it's part of just the larger, then I will leave it for that discussion.
At this point, since there's no change to the language in that bullet in Counselor Tebow's motion,
Then we can leave it for discussion.
then we'll do it to discuss after we take the vote,
All right, then I'm happy to do that.
okay? Any other questions or comments on the motion, Counselor Tebow's motion to amend as amended by Counselor Silly?
Mayor, can I make a suggestion for council to consider? A $450 check written to the city may not be completely doable for some businesses. It's possible that we could do a special use permit annually at $150 a piece, and that may be more palatable. It's just a suggestion. It's more work on the city staff's side, but it's just an option that I just wanted to throw out there. Not sure the appropriate time to throw it out there, but there it is.
I'm thinking the same thing.
I'd like to suggest we vote on this motion first, because if it doesn't pass, then we're not dealing with the 150 or 450. And if it does pass, then we can go back and amend it again, as well as make other amendments. So again, the motion on the table is regarding the motion to amend by Counselor Tebow as amended from 150 to 450 on the application fee. Kathy, please call the roll.
Counselor Trim?
Yes.
Mayor Tully?
No.
Counselor Silly?
Yes.
Counselor Powers?
No.
I'm sorry, Counselor Powers?
No.
Thank you, sir. Counselor Scamperly?
No.
Counselor Stevenson?
Yes.
Counselor Tebow?
Yes.
Approved.
Okay, so that motion passes. And now if we want to go back and revisit the policy as amended, do we want to change the language in fees and inspection to have the special use permit be an annual fee of $150?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
Any discussion? All right, Kathy, please call the roll.
Mayor Tully?
Yes.
Counselor Silly?
Yes.
Counselor Powers?
Yes.
Counselor Scamperly?
Yes.
Counselor Stevenson?
Yes.
Counselor Tebow?
Yes.
Counselor Trim?
Yes.
Approved.
All right, further discussion on the bill number 12 as amended. Counselor Stevenson.
Yes, thank you. So under one or more, it's moved now, so I've got to find it where, because now it's a little changed. I have concern with there being employees in home-based businesses that are not daycare providers, because that even adds more traffic to a single-family residence area. And how are we going to regulate what that additional employee can be? And I mean on-site employees. So if if I have a small business, but I go to my work site and my employees meet me there, then that's fine. But if I'm dispatching them from my home every morning, or they're showing up there to do work in my garage or something, then that's more work happening in a single-family residential neighborhood. That is really not the intent of that. So I have concern with that. I don't know if anybody else has concern with that, but how are we going to say to one person, well, their employees can work on site because they're doing this, but you can't add another salesperson or another person working at your home that is creating more traffic. So I would like to know an opinion of that from the other counselors.
So if a contractor has an employee not working out of their home, but they stop at the garage and load a set of sawhorses in the truck, what does that now change that business to? Because it shouldn't change the fact that they're not using more water, they're not doing anything.
Well, we're not based on water now, remember?
Right.
We're not based on water.
Oh, I know it, but yet, again, just as memos from staff have suggested, you still have a differentiated system. And you can call it tier A, tier B, or just say, well, we're not calling anything, but it's still a differentiated system. And it poses more complication. So I agree.
Well, it does, because if you have employees coming and going out of your garage to pick up items and bring them, that's really, you should have a commercial location. It isn't really something that is a home-based business, because I don't want that next to me.
It's going to put a lot of people out of business.
I don't know.
It's very anti-business.
How removing the bullet now under inspection requirement in Council Tebow's amendment provision, that to eliminate the bullet for one or more non-resident employees being required to have an inspection, I don't know how that prevents a home business from having employees. It doesn't.
On site.
It doesn't prevent it.
No, I don't want to eliminate them being able to have employees. I just don't want them working on site. Because now, what do you do with?
I don't know that we can regulate that in this policy.
Well, now what do you do when you have it's a home-based business. So now what do you do when the person that does nails in their salon at home wants to have a second person that does nails? Or a hairdresser that wants to do a second booth in their home-based business? Now, how is that becoming a home-based business when they have employees there? And why is that different from someone that is a contractor or, somebody that assembles things or any kind of business? How does that become different? That pretty much takes away the spirit of having a home-based business.
That's somebody that's planted there, right? As
Right,
opposed to,
on site, I'm saying.
yeah. As opposed to stopping, grabbing a ladder.
I'm more concerned with a business that has employees that spend the majority of their day there. Like somebody's running an office and they've got 4 or 5 office employees. Than I am with a contractor who's got stuff stored in his garage and they come pick it up and leave. Although I hate to see 20, 30 trucks a day doing that. But
That's not gonna
again, if
happen.
somebody's running a business with 5 or 6 employees in their home, that's not a home-based business, as far as I'm concerned. And I don't know how we address that in the ordinance either. So.
That's a tier B.
Well, there is no tier B, but the bullet points that were in tier B are now under inspection requirement.
Right.
Okay.
There's got to be better wording for that, so it doesn't open the door to say that you can just have employees there.
All right. I would suggest, in an effort to move something forward, that we leave the bullet point that such a home business would require to have an inspection requirement. And then if we want to address within this ordinance at some time, language that restricts the number of employees for a home business, that we pick up that discussion at a future time and not necessarily a long time from now.
Okay. I could work with that. I just want to bring it to attention that this could become a concern. Because if I have a home-based business next to me and they have 5 or 6 trucks that work for me. And we've had this complaint over the years. 5 or 6 such trucks that work off-site for me, but they're getting dispatched from there every morning. I don't want that going on at 7:30, 8 o'clock in the morning next door to me. So we'll leave it alone for now, but this is an item for future consideration and discussion.
See, to me, if that business is that successful, that they've got that many employees, good for them. Right? If Pat Dupree next door to me has 5 guys pulling in there to do his stuff, that's awesome. That's more tax dollars.
I would, sorry, go ahead, Kate, go
I
ahead.
was just saying, good for them, but then they should probably move into a commercial district
Maybe.
so that they're not, I don't want to be woken up. I'm not a 7:30 in the morning kind of gal. I don't want
Yeah,
that.
I mean, I would think that someone in that situation would be looking to move to a commercial setting so that their residence isn't compromised where it's more commercial than residence. It's still their home.
But I think you can be pro-business. I don't think Jen's necessarily being anti-business.
No, I'm not.
Oh, no,
I'm just
no.
trying to keep the spirit
Right.
of what a single-family residence neighborhood is. There's places for everything, right? And some places just aren't meant for that. The other concern I have, Your Honor, is I do think that bed and breakfast should be separate in the code. It shouldn't be under a home-based business. It's a whole different animal than an Airbnb. And you have apartment houses that have 2 and 3 units, 4 units in them, and they're paying per unit a full water and sewer rate. Now, if we put the bed and breakfast in this, and they're paying $150 a year, then they're paying less, and they could have their rooms filled every single night, and there are some that do, that are paying $150, but they could have 2 to 8 guests, because what is our maximum, 4 rooms in a bed and breakfast? So they could have 4 to 8 guests staying at their bed and breakfast every single day and paying less than a landlord that is having 4 units, but 4 people living in it or whatever, and paying 4 water and sewer rates. So even though we've moved it away from water and sewer rates, it doesn't equivalent business-wise. So I think it belongs to be a separate animal. I do think Airbnbs need to be in this because they're separate. They're not having, they're having a different number of rooms in a different situation. But I do have a concern with that being in there.
Well, when I did some research after you forwarded that suggestion to us today, you know, while bed and breakfasts are regulated in other ways within the municipal code, I could not find anywhere where there's a requirement for a safety inspection, including bed and breakfast as a bullet point under inspection requirement accomplishes that. And to list a bed and breakfast in that bullet point, I think it's wise to have a definition of a bed and breakfast in the proposal under definitions. So for that reason, I believe we should leave it as is.
Does anybody here think, with all this bed and breakfast, hotel, Airbnb, home business, that we should put this out and make it a part of the comprehensive plan when we look at that? And then go from there?
That would leave us with the current language that was adopted over a year ago for enforcement, and I think that would be a step backwards compared to what's on the table before us today. I've stated my reasons why I think it's a stronger policy for the city.
Okay.
So perhaps we could, with the comprehensive plan, staff is aware of our concerns or some of our concerns with some of these issues. We could go forward with this tonight because we have been waiting a long time to do this. And enforcement has stopped for the last 6 months while they're waiting for us to do this. So perhaps we move forward tonight, if that is our appetite, and we let the planning board know when they're doing their comprehensive plan that we would like them to pay particular attention to certain areas, such as bed and breakfast versus Airbnbs, employees versus employees on site versus none. And then we could have that kind of vetting and we could have that kind of public discussion because that whole comprehensive plan will be done in public. so we could have that discussion through work groups and stuff.
Yeah, I think there's further room for discussion through the comprehensive plan discussion, which would involve much more community input, broader community input, so.
I could live with that.
Okay. Any other ideas or thoughts about further amendment? Right, I do have one that was based on a suggestion Councilor Stevenson made to us to strengthen the identify city residents working remotely for another entity. So that would be section 111.2, number E for definitions. It currently reads, city residents who work remotely for another entity from their home as a home occupation are not subject to this ordinance. I propose amending that to read, city residents who work remotely for another entity from their home as a home occupation and receive a W-2 for their work are not subject to this ordinance. I thought that was a wise suggestion to further clarify, that employees of other companies are exempt. If you're an independent contractor, you're in play. So I make that motion to amend. Will there be a second?
Second.
Can I ask why the differentiation?
It's just that we added the phrase as a home occupation back in February, I think. Okay. But again, just to further define that in fact it is someone who is employed by another business. So therefore it's not a home business. Right? Do we have a second?
I second.
Yeah. Can I get a clarifying point about 1099 folks versus W-2?
1099 would be issued to an independent contractor. Therefore, they're working for themselves.
And many 1099 employees work out of an office. So many real estate professionals are 1099 employees, but they have an office to go to. If they're considering a home office, then that may be that they are a work from home because they're all independent contractors. That's just one example.
Like I know people who work for the Red Cross on W-2, and then I know people who work for the Red Cross and they do the same job, but it's fewer hours as 1099. But they do essentially the same things. That's why I'm trying to struggle in my head, like why would one be?
Maybe Mayor Mike could explain this better, but if you're a W-2 employee, you cannot write off a home office.
This is true.
So that's basically the difference. You don't have a home office. If you're anything else, you can write off, you can do a Schedule C and have a home office. That's my understanding.
Yeah.
And I am not a tax professional.
No, I believe Councilor Stevenson's correct on that.
So we're just seeking some clarification on how we as management team would need to address a 1099 versus a W-2.
Well, that would be the
Yeah, that would be my belief. Okay, any other discussion on my amendment, my proposal to amend?
Mayor, I think the chief would like to make a comment if you would allow.
Please.
You guys are making this way more difficult on me than you need to. I'm not gonna stand at a door with a people counter. How the hell am I gonna know who gets 1099 and W-2? This is ridiculous. Go with the management suggestion and move on.
Any other consideration, any other comments? Kathy, please call the roll.
Counselor Sully?
Yes.
Counselor Powers?
Yes.
Counselor Scamperly?
No.
Counselor Stevenson?
Yes.
Counselor Tebow?
Yes.
Counselor Trim?
Yes.
Mayor Tully?
Yes.
Approved.
Any other proposals to amend Bill number 12? So hearing none, the motion on the table is to vote on Bill number 12 as amended. Is that correct, Kathy?
You are correct, Mayor.
I'll call the question on that.
Ready?
Yes, please proceed.
Counselor Powers?
The original motion that was tabled with the amendments?
Yeah, the original motion as amended tonight.
Yes.
Counselor Scamperly?
No.
Counselor Stevenson?
Yes.
Counselor Tebow?
Yes.
Counselor Trim?
Yes.
Mayor Tully?
Yes.
Counselor Sully? Approved.
Our next item of business will be read by Assessor Michelle Dill Cox.
Hi, good evening, everyone. This is a local law to amend Chapter 199 of the Ogdensburg Municipal Code entitled Taxation.
I'll move that.
Any questions?
Second?
Is there a second? Any questions or comments? Kathy, please call the roll.
Counselor Scamperly?
Yes.
Counselor Stevenson?
Yes.
Counselor Tebow?
Yes.
Counselor Trim?
Yes.
Mayor Tully?
Yes.
Counselor Sully?
Yes.
Counselor Powers?
Yes.
Approved. Thank you.
Next item of business will be read by City Manager Fonda Cronus.
An ordinance amending the following section of Chapter 157 of the Ogdensburg Municipal Code entitled Peddling and Soliciting. Section 157-3 entitled License Required, Section 157-4 entitled License Application, and Section 157-12 entitled License Fees.
I'll move that.
Second?
All right, so just to reread this tonight, based on the comment shared by Laura Lee. So we're trying to identify in here where there's reference to the green belt, or if there is. I just know, I mean, there's an exception for those officially registered with the Seaway Festival Committee as a Seaway Festival vendor during Seaway Festival events. I would think that sentence covers anywhere in the city.
There was a location though someplace that did say Greenbelt area. Maybe that's been removed.
Mayor?
Yes.
Fonda, may I speak?
Yes, please, Kathy.
So just to clarify, the way when peddler permits are issued right now, the permit in and of itself on the permit specifically excludes the Greenbelt area for the period of the Seaway Festival. So I think that's where you're getting the Greenbelt reference that Laurel was referring to. So the way the code is written right now, when I issue a peddler's permit, it specifically excludes the Greenbelt area during Seaway Festival. And what this proposal is to require all peddlers, whether on private property or personal property, or I'm sorry, public property or personal property, to obtain a permit, number one. Number two, they would not have to get a permit with the city of Ogdensburg if they were only coming into town to be a vendor. We'll use the fried bread dough vendor. They're only coming to Ogdensburg for the Seaway Festival. They would register with Seaway Festival, not be required to get a permit with the city. They were staying longer, coming earlier, they would be required. And then it also addresses a change in fees, just to simplify.
All right, so the permit going forward that would be issued would cover vending under this ordinance that is taking place during the Seaway Festival on Ford Street?
They would be permitted to be a vendor anywhere in the city of Ogdensburg, the way the code is written. The difference I think that Laurel was referring to is she has to get a permit with the Department of Health right now. And if a vendor pops up on Ford Street the day of the parade, who's not been vetted, who is not have a peddler's permit with the city of Ogdensburg, she has no control but could be held liable.
Okay. So this policy basically gives Seaway Festival Committee members support, I guess.
So essentially, all this does, it doesn't change anything for the green belt. That stays the same as it always has. What Laura brought up tonight is not in the proposal tonight, as far as saying that you have to register with the Seaway Festival to have be a vendor on 4th Street during the parade. But what this proposal does give is Kathy and I the authority to deny vendors, and it gives us the authority to ensure for public safety that the people who are coming to be vendors, whether they get the year-round permit or just for the week of Seaway Festival, that they're a credible business, or therefore that if they're selling food, they already have a Department of Health permit, because they have to. But I understand Laura Lee's sentiment because I've been dealing with years with her. But if someone puts their hot dog stand on a private property, could be someone's yard on Ford Street, that's still on private property. The way this proposal is, they would still have to be permitted through the city, but it wouldn't be a separate permit through Seaway Festival. And I mean, if you want to say ban them from Ford Street without a Seaway Festival permit, then they're just going to go to Washington Street or Green Street just adjacent to it. You're just going to push them down a block, because people are going to go where there's food. This is a huge improvement. Ensures every vendor coming into our city goes through a background check. They pay a fee to the city, and they're just not fly-by-night people showing up. My recommendation would be as is.
Thank you.
Chief, before you go, correct me if I'm wrong, but the way I read this is even if they're coming in only for Seaway Festival Week, they either have to register with the Seaway Festival or with the city.
That's correct. And then in the Greenbelt, as the current code is, they're covered totally under the Seaway Festival permit because they pay a large fee for that. And I do all the background checks for the Seaway Festival, just as I would for, Mike's Hot Dogs that wants to come sell out Tractor Supply. We would do the same background checks regardless.
So the guy coming in to open his hot dog stand on Ford Street during the parade is going to hopefully come to the city council for a peddler's permit. Kathy's going to say, are you registered with the Seaway Festival?
It doesn't matter if they're registered with the Seaway Festival if they're going to be on Ford Street currently. And I don't know how we can enforce something on private property. Their permit is for Ford Street, which is a public roadway. That's what Seaway Festival's permit is for. Just like when they get a festival permit, it's for the Greenbelt, which is public property. I don't see how council could pass anything limiting if someone has a valid permit through the city to sell on private property and have to get an extra permit on top of that.
There's a difference between setting up on private property and setting up along the edge of the roadway in the right of way.
Which would be violating vehicle and traffic law. We would push them out of there because we have the authority to close the roadway down for a parade, which we do. As you know, we don't allow bikes on there. There's no way I'm going to allow a vending truck to be on Ford Street.
I guess I'm still confused. Because
okay,
the way I'm reading this is, okay, they have to have a permit from the city for any length of time.
No. So we have two permits here. You can get a Seaway Festival permit, and that is for the Greenbelt area during Seaway Festival only. Second, you can get a city permit, which is good for 365 days from the time of your permit. It's not calendar. And that will allow you to sell anywhere in the city of Ogdensburg with the exception of the Greenbelt during Seaway Festival, unless you get a permit through Laura Lee and the Seaway Festival Committee. That's like an exclusion zone. If you're down in the Greenbelt, you have to have a Seaway Festival permit. Other than that, you can sell anywhere in the city of Ogdensburg as long as you, with this proposal, have a permit. Prior to this proposal, you didn't need a permit, and we didn't know who was coming into the city if they're selling on private property.
So I would, sorry.
Corrected, it is calendar year.
So the amendment here that's proposed, it says during Seaway Festival events. Do you think that's too specific? Because if an event isn't going on, but
I do Seaway Festival events, but you got all the bands at OFA.
right. Now, what I'm saying though is that if there's not an event going on, they still can't be there as a vendor. So even though if there's nobody on the stage and it doesn't start till 3 o'clock, then their original permit.
It's no good for the Greenbelt area. That is correct. It is no good for the Greenbelt area. That's
What I'm just
correct.
saying is I don't think maybe during Seaway Festival week or during Seaway Festival period would be better than events. That's all I'm saying. I think it would be easier to understand that. Because right now it says during events. Well, there's no event going on right now.
Right. No, that makes sense to me.
I'm thinking perhaps we need to add the words in the Greenbelt area to the end of that statement.
That would match our permit, currently the written
Should
form.
match the permit.
So the other question I have, this is the right time, Your Honor. So the other question I have is that has our attorney looked at this? Do we have the authority to allow, and I'm all in favor of supporting the Seaway Festival in some way monetarily or through the permitting process, but do we have the authority to allow a non-city entity to have this authority to create a permit? Do we have the authority to give them that permission?
They've been doing it for 40 years. I don't know if it's right or wrong,
If they've
but
been doing it, it doesn't mean, there's been some questions about this at some of the sessions I've been to through NICOM, New York Conference of Mayors and Local Government Day. I just want to make sure we're doing it right, and I want to find a way to do it. I just want to make sure we're doing it right.
well, they are a private organization who gets a street peddler permit, a festival permit. So they're essentially renting that area from the city, it would be my interpretation,
Okay,
but I'm not an attorney.
no, I know, neither am I.
This hasn't been vetted by the city attorney. This is the first time that issue has come up. There was no reason to ask for city attorney review based on the fact that it's been here for 40 years. Certainly if council would like city attorney review, we can do that. That would require tabling and then moving forward after we get that opinion. But because that issue has not been brought up before, I'll say this evening, but I know you sent an email out previous to that. We obviously haven't had time to get that opinion.
I don't, is it going to make a huge difference if we do table it to the next meeting and get the city attorney approval? I just want to make sure that it's bulletproof, that we're good to go. I'm not in opposition to doing this. I just want to make sure we have the authority to allow this. That's my only concern. There's a way that we could support the Seaway Festival. If it's not, I want, we can look at that. I really want to support it. I just want to make it clear. I just want to make sure, because I've seen this where they've had these discussions about giving away public funds, giving away the public right. And that's why I'm just looking at that. But could we make this and go forward and just make it subject to attorney review?
I think it would be better to table it than to do an attorney review after the fact.
And especially if we do need to amend it, as Councilor Silly is requesting or suggesting with regards to adding
Just a
language.
suggestion.
Well,
Want me to move that? I will.
I would just move the table at this point and get feedback from management with regards to that, as well as affirmation that this does not end up being a gift to an entity that is prohibited under municipal law.
I'll
So-
make that motion to table.
We have a motion to table. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion on a motion to table? Please call the roll, Kathy.
Counselor Stevenson?
Yes.
Counselor Chivo?
Yes.
Counselor Trim?
Yes.
Mayor Tulley?
Yes?
Counselor Sully?
Yes.
Counselor Powers?
Yes.
Counselor Scamperly?
Yes.
Tabled.
Our next order of business will be read by City Manager Fonda Cronus.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A resolution declaring the city of, Ogdensburg City Council lead agency for seeker process for 119 West River Street Lost Project. That's a Restore New York project.
I'll make that motion.
Moved in second. Any questions or comments? Kathy, please call the roll.
Counselor Chivo?
Yes.
Counselor Trim?
Yes.
Mayor Tulley?
Yes?
Counselor Sully?
Yes.
Counselor Powers?
Yes.
Counselor Scamperly?
Yes.
Counselor Stevenson?
Yes.
Approved.
Our next order of business will be read by Recreation Director, DPW Director Shane Brown.
A resolution authorizing the city manager to execute a grant agreement with St. Lawrence County Arts Council.
Move that.
Moved. Anyone care to second?
Second.
Second.
And it's a grant agreement, grant amount of $2,500 with a local match of $500. Kathy, please call the roll.
Counselor Trim?
Yes.
Mayor Tulley?
Yes?
Counselor Sully?
Yes.
Counselor Powers?
Yes.
Counselor Scamperly?
Yes.
Counselor Stevenson?
Yes.
Counselor Chivo?
Yes.
Approved.
Our next order of business will be read by City Manager Fonda Cronis.
A resolution to call for a public hearing regarding a local law establishing a 12-month moratorium prohibiting the review and approval of applications for multiple residence dwelling units within the city of Ogdensburg.
Someone care to introduce that?
Move it.
I'll introduce it.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Kathy, please call the roll.
Mayor Tully.
Yes.
Counselor Selly.
Yes.
Counselor Powers.
Yes.
Counselor Scamperly.
Yes.
Counselor Stevenson.
No.
Counselor Chivo.
Yes.
Counselor Trim.
Yes.
Approved.
Our next order of business will be read by City Manager Fonda Cronis.
A resolution authorizing the city manager to enter into a contract with Harris Excavating Incorporated to provide construction services for the city's reconstruction of the East David Street project.
Move that.
A second.
And again, just to highlight, it is to enter into the contract for an amount not exceeding $2,642,649. 2 bids received. This was the low bid. Kathy, please call the roll.
Counselor Selly.
Yes.
Counselor Powers.
Yes.
Counselor Scamperly.
Yes.
Counselor Stevenson.
Yes.
Counselor Chivo.
Yes.
Counselor Trim.
Yes.
Mayor Tully.
Yes.
Approved.
Next order of business will be read by City Manager Fonda Cronis.
A resolution calling for a public hearing on an ordinance amending Chapter 221 of the Ogdensburg Municipal Code entitled Zoning.
Someone care to introduce this?
I'll introduce it.
Second.
Any discussion? Kathy, please call the roll.
Counselor Powers.
Yes.
Counselor Scamperly.
Yes.
Counselor Stevenson.
Yes.
Counselor Chivo.
Yes.
Counselor Trim.
Yes.
Mayor Tully.
Yes.
Counselor Selly.
Yes.
Approved.
That brings us to old business. Our first item under old business will begin with City Manager Fonda Cronis discussing Lisbon Beach.
Sure, thank you, Mr. Mayor. One of the challenges with closing the swimming pool for the 2026 season is, where would, particularly our youth, but where do residents go to cool off other than the splash pad? And I know some of the discussion's been, what about Lisbon Beach? So obviously we've been trying to gather as much information as we can on that, and I wanted to provide for council some data points as to the cost of busing. And of course, I left that sheet of paper in my office desk, so don't quote me on the exact numbers. But there are 2 options that the school district has provided for us. The first option is the bus picks up children from a certain location here within the city, drives to Lisbon Beach, drops the children off, and I'm going to use children, but it could be teenagers and such. And then the bus goes back, there's no waiting or anything, and then a bus driver comes back, drives to Lisbon Beach, picks up the group, and then comes back. That, if I remember, is $109 or right around that, slightly over $100. If we do that, but the bus driver stays, right, doesn't come back to Ogdensburg, it's slightly more than that. It's a little over $200, I think $215-ish. I will provide those numbers. My apologies of all the pieces of paper I brought to the meeting today. That's, of course, the one I didn't bring. So it's slightly more than double the cost. Obviously, it's because the bus driver is staying and you're paying him for his time. So this does not mitigate our concerns on the liability portion of it, but it does provide you with additional information on some of the cost involved in that. The management team still contends it would be better to try to do more in the splash pad area as opposed to provide busing, but that's a policy question. That is not an operations question, so we would defer to council on that. But our job at that point in time is to provide you with information.
What would be the benefit of having the bus driver wait?
Yeah, we're paying them to stay at the beach. I mean, that's a great deal.
We were given 2 options, so we just wanted
So there's no
to.
real benefit because they're not going to be supervising the people that we transported there or anything, so it's
He's just driving.
just driving.
I don't disagree with that assessment. I just provide the information at this point.
Those prices are per day prices?
Per trip, right? So if you wanted 3 buses, you'd multiply those numbers by 3, multiple days times the number of days.
And this is probably going to be worked out, but who supervises it when they're there?
Is that the liability issue?
That's the liability issue that we're talking about, right?
Well, the other liability is to go along with this, piggyback off of John here. What if a kid gets hurt? So in the city of Augsburg, we have a paid fire department to tend to things. If there's other issues with criminal activity or something like that, we have a police department. But in that particular situation, it's almost like we're taking kids to a beach, dropping them off. See you later. Personally, I think we're opening up a can of worms that potentially opening up a can of worms that we may not want to deal with. And I mean, is there waivers? Is there what? You know, I feel pretty bad if something happened.
And what happens if the teenager says, I'm gonna hang out with my boyfriend here and I'm not going back on the bus?
These are just throwing some things out there. I mean, obviously, we're in preliminary discussion, and I appreciate staff looking into things based on comments.
This is not the same world we lived in 40 years ago.
Yeah.
And my thought is that this service should be better provided with, if we can talk, a private bus service into running maybe a morning and an afternoon bus each way, with students paying their own fare or parents paying the fare to get there, and the city not being involved in that at all. That way the liability would fall on the lifeguards wherever they are, or the parents who just turned their kids loose and let them run, which is the way I was brought up.
And I would think that if the city's transporting them there, then even if we're just transporting them and picking them up, we will still have liability exposure for all the time they're there.
That's why I think the city should stay out of it. See if there's a private business that would be willing to do that if there's
Can I ask you a
students paying their
question?
fare.
Fonda, you said children and then you said teens. What about adults, like parents? What if we said parents have to accompany?
Well, that's another question / concern that we'd have to address. I mean, do you vet the adults that are in the same bus as a teenager or a child? That's, all of these concerns are things that I think we've at least touched on as a management team in our recommendation, as much as it bothers us to do so. The liability issue is something I think that precludes the city from doing that from management standpoint. But again, that is a policy decision. That is not an operations decision, and we defer to council on how it wants to run that. If you were to direct us to put something together, we would do our best to put an operations plan in place to do that. And we would do our best to point out the trade-offs, both positive and negative in any circumstance, and then do as we're told and hope for the best.
Well, I think we would also have to work with the town of Lisbon since it's their beach. And if we're all of a sudden increasing the attendance at their beach significantly with unsupervised participants, that would have to be a discussion with them as well.
We've had preliminary discussions, and Shane, you can correct me if I'm wrong on this. I think they are willing to take on the additional folks, right, Shane?
A few days a week.
Yep,
2 days a week?
a few.
A few days.
Yep.
All right. Me personally, at this time, based on the information before us, concerns for liability, many questions to be answered that I don't know if we could ever develop the answers, quite honestly. I prefer that we not ask management to invest any further time in studying this option. Does anybody on council feel otherwise?
The only thing I would maybe, this would be 2 lifeguards, take a small group, teach them their swim lessons, bring them back home. That's it. Not like a free for all. I'm envisioning the pool scene in Caddyshack, or I don't know if you've watched the movie Caddyshack, but we open up the pool to the grounds pool for the kids, for the caddies, and it's just chaos. So if we had like a small group of kids going down there, take their lessons, learn how to swim, come back home. That would be the only thing I would agree.
They don't want our lifeguards there. They're starting their own swim lessons.
Okay, so if a kid wants to go to swim, they can learn down there. Okay,
sign up.
Sounds good.
Okay, so I think we've given direction. Thank you for the research you've done on this, but let's not pursue it any further.
We appreciate the direction from council. Thank you.
Any other old business? All right, I do have something I'm going to deem as old business, I guess, but now that council has adopted the ordinance with regards to home business, I don't know if there's any time pressures or not, but I do think now that we'll ask management to review other sections of the municipal code that might need to be amended based on the policy established tonight. In particular, personally, since the utility surcharge has been eliminated effective July 1st, I would suggest we ask for language that comes back to us to eliminate the utility surcharge that currently exists in the water area. And personally, I would suggest it's retroactive to January 1st.
I would support that.
I don't know how other members of council.
So you want to put this out instead of July 1st to January?
No. What we got tonight is effective July 1. But effective July 1, there's no longer a utility fee. So I'm suggesting that fees that have been charged to date the first 6 months of the year be eliminated, and if money's been paid, they be refunded. So there's no utility fee at all in calendar year 2026.
I agree with that.
Okay. Councilor Powers?
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
Okay. So when developing language modifications, you can reflect that, please. Any other old business? New business. Does anyone have any new business this evening?
I just have a couple of items. I've had a lot of comments over the last couple of weeks, positive about police department, fire department, city hall, all aspects of our employees. I've particularly heard some really good things about the street cleaning efforts. I feel like they've gone above and beyond with really getting the edges of the curbs, and but it's been really good just to hear wonderful positive comments about the staff that we know is excellent. So I want to commend everyone on that. The second item is that the Ogdensburg History Museum just had an art exhibit on Sunday. Val Patterson has all the wonderful artwork that is original artwork that is done of our city. And it will be on exhibit in the Blevins building outside the Ogdensburg History Museum until April 30th. So please go and look at that wonderful work. It's wonderful to support a local artist and the history of our community. That's it.
Thank you, Jen. All right. Still, any other new business? All right, next items for discussion. Does anyone have any items for discussion this evening?
I do, Your Honor.
All right, Councilor Powers first.
Just to basically mirror Councilor Stevenson's comments related to the employees, but I recognize, I want to point out Chief Kearns and his staff for the recent collaboration and good detective work with the recent drug bust and the public information memo that he saved or sent to us related to e-bikes and the issues. And I know Councilor Stevenson's brought up the e-bikes in many facets, and it's there are laws to it, and I'm glad to see that we're putting that information out there related to that. So thank you.
Any other items for discussion?
I'd just like to make council aware that due to Medicaid cuts on the federal level and potential Medicaid cuts in the state budget, that the funding for the rescue squad could suffer in the range anywhere from $20,000 to $100,000 loss for this upcoming year. That's something that's very difficult to absorb. We won't know where we stand until the governor's budget is approved, or where the state stands and what they're going to do with it. But just so you're aware of the situation, that's the money used to replace vehicles every 3 years, et cetera, along those lines. That's about what it would be. So not asking for anything more at this time or anything along those lines, just make our municipalities aware. The other thing is the state has made the counties responsible for assuring that all citizens have adequate ambulance service. They should be scheduling a meeting with every municipality to determine what their needs are, perceived needs are, whether their needs are being met currently or not, and develop a plan in conjunction with the regional EMS agency to assure that that happens. our region in our area is in pretty good shape, but there are areas of the county that can't count on anybody showing up for in a reasonable period of time. So just so everybody's aware of what's coming down the road.
Thank you for sharing that, Storm, and for keeping us updated going forward. Thank you. Any other items for discussion? I do have one. The New York State Department of Labor and the Ogdensburg Port Authority are co-hosting a local job fair on Thursday, April 23rd at the Ogdensburg International Airport, starting at 10 a.m., ending at 2 p.m. It's been 13 years since this type of local job fair has taken place. So Matt Flynn, the local Veterans Employment Representative for the State Department of Labor, asked me to share this with the community. Again, we'll try and make it known as much as possible between now and then. But again, 2026 Ogdensburg Spring Career Job Fair, Thursday, April 23rd, 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. at Ogdensburg International Airport. So that brings us to citizen participation. At this time, if anyone attending in person would like to address council, please come down to the podium and we'll have 2 minutes.
I'd just like to stand up here and say, I commend you all for coming to a decision. I'm happy with the decision. I know it's been a rough road, but I mean, I knew I was going to fight this because there were only 3 of us paying at one point $1,400. So, you know what? I don't think it's unfair what's being charged, what was put on the books tonight. And we're looking at additional revenue once the rest of the businesses are charged. Thank you very much for your time. And guess what? I'm going to be at home in 2 weeks.
Thank you, Tanya. Anyone else in chambers? Now, if anyone attending remotely would like to address council, please use the raise hand feature. The city clerk will recognize and unmute one person at a time, and you will have 2 minutes.
The first individual is registered as Greg McNamara, and I will unmute that individual now. Looks like your line is open, Mr. McNamara.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay, first of all, I'm going to talk about your discussion about the home-based business charge. You guys could be an episode of South Park. I'm gonna mail or send them a letter and let them know to review all this stuff that's gone on since it came to council years ago, and you could literally be a fucking episode of South Park about this shit. What a joke. The next thing I will say, I know you're mad about my language, Mr. Tooley, but you guys got this coming to you. This is unreal what's going on here. The next thing I would like to talk about is just like some of the general discussions and back and forth I've seen tonight. I really like to see it. It's a little fresh. You should be button heads because you're dead wrong. And the 1 or 2 of you that have the guts to go against the other people, I really appreciate it. I'm not even going to point out names. It's very unfortunate that we couldn't figure out the contract with Red Barn over the hockey season. Like everywhere uses the same contract. Then we go back and say, well, their contract screwed up where the whole fucking country uses it. Then we say, well, you know, we don't like this about, we tell Red Barn, we don't like this about your contract. Then they turn around and send a letter to the city saying, you know, just give us a contract that you would like to see. And then Tooley says, well, that's not our position. Like, are you brain dead? You literally told them their own contract was no good, that they've used all over the United States of America. And then you go ahead and say that it's not the city's job to give them an example of the contract that they would like to see after the fact. Like, I would have asked the same question as far as Red Barn if I was them. I'll move on from that. Excuse me, give me a second to breathe. This is frustrating as hell watching you guys. The city is in an economic downfall. It has been for 10 years. It still is. I see the school board wants to raise taxes 3%. What a disaster. Schools used to be a brick building with wooden desks and a blackboard, and it was cold in the wintertime most of the time. And here we are 75 years later. OFA has always been the greatest school all around here. It's had the best facilities. I graduated in 2007. I can't believe the work and the government money that's been pumped into that school, even from then. And it's still, in 2007, it was still better than the schools around us today. Why do we got to keep raising taxes? Why does everything got to keep getting bigger and more expensive for the taxpayers? You guys are going to drive everyone who gives the city tax money that actually makes it operate and work. You're going to drive them out of here. It's a disaster. I'm a property manager for multiple people throughout the city that own rental units, and I'm considering buying some right now. And honestly, I've had other people I've talked to, financial advisors, ask me, are you crazy? Seriously. A water and a sewer charge for each unit when there's one pipe for water going into the house and one pipe for sewer going out. It's not even legal. And the city did it years and years ago, and nobody fought you guys. Just that one simple thing. And I tell tenants all the time, they complain.
We have two resolutions tonight to adjourn to executive session. I'll introduce the first one. Whereas City Manager Fonda Cronus requests an executive session with members of the Ogdensburg City Council to discuss matters leading to the appointment, employment, promotion, demotion, discipline, suspension, dismissal, or removal of a particular person or corporation. And whereas New York State open meetings law permits City Council to adjourn to executive session for such purpose, now therefore be it resolved that City Council adjourn to executive session to discuss matters leading to the appointment, employment, promotion, demotion, discipline, suspension, dismissal, or removal of a particular person or corporation. And be it further resolved that any action resulting from this executive session shall be taken in open session. I so move.
Second.
Kathy, please call the roll.
Counselor Scamperly?
Yes.
Counselor Stevenson?
Yes.
Counselor Tebow?
Yes.
Counselor Trim?
Yes.
Mayor Tulley?
Yes.
Counselor Sully?
Yes.
Counselor Powers?
Yes.
Approved.
And we will be inviting Shane Brown to join us to attend this executive session. I'm now introducing a motion to adjourn to executive session from the floor. Since it's from the floor, it requires at least 5 yes votes to be approved. Whereas City Manager Fonda Cronus requests an executive session with members of the Ogdensburg City Council to discuss proposed pending or current litigation. Whereas New York State open meetings law permits City Council to adjourn to executive session for such purpose. Now therefore be it resolved that City Council adjourn to executive session to discuss proposed pending or current litigation. And be it further resolved that any action resulting from this executive session shall be taken in open session. I so move.
Second.
Kathy, please call the roll.
Counselor Stevenson?
Yes.
Counselor Tebow?
Yes.
Counselor Trim?
Yes.
Mayor Tulley?
Yes.
Counselor Sully?
Yes.
Counselor Powers?
Yes.
Counselor Scamperly?
Yes.
Approved.
And we do not anticipate any action following executive session, so I'll make a motion to adjourn from executive session.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Meeting adjourned following executive session.